Thank you, Brandy. Move on to item 3 on the agenda is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If anybody wants to speak, we'll have time later in the agenda for something that's not on the agenda. Move on to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on that agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 on the agenda, 5A, is the approval of the minutes from the August 10th, 2023 meeting. Need a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on those minutes? If everything looks good, we'll take a roll call vote.
All right. Brink,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Spire,
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
Move on to item 5B on the agenda. That's the minutes from the August 24th meeting. Need a motion on that?
So moved.
I have a motion by Brink,
Second.
second by Dargis Johnson. Any discussion on those ones? Okay, we'll take a vote on that as well. Brandy?
Brink,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Spire,
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
All right, that carries. We'll move on to item 6A on the regular agenda, which is Resolution 2023-30 for a plat in Willow Creek. I'll turn it over to you, Brandy.
All right. Thank you, Blake. So this is a plat submitted by Glacial Lakes Capital. Actually, I might have gotten that wrong, that LLC. Yep, that's right. And this is a plat that will create 6 conforming lots in the C3 Highway Commercial District. You'll see that they are creating a frontage road here which will be a private street. I'm gonna mute him there quick. Okay. And so that will provide the frontage, so there won't be individual access onto Willow Creek Drive. The only modification that staff is asking for,
To escapes and been
Hang
told
on.
not to ask you to check on those. Do you want me to just give those to Driscoll and have him?
oh,
call?
I
you could
muted
just-
myself, not Randy.
I mean, you, Rick. I mean,
Oh
you
dear.
Yeah,
How
just
do we
open the
get him
People's
muted?
tab there,
Yep.
and then you should be able to right-click him. There you go. We got you muted, Randy.
Okay.
All right, yep, Randy, go ahead.
All right, sorry about that. So the only modification that staff will work with the applicant and engineer on is if we can modify where this access point is shown on the plat today, if we modify it to where it's shown in red, just to give greater separation from 28th Street to the north there along Willow Creek Drive. That won't, that shouldn't cause any impact, but that would just be one modification that we would ask that Plan Commission would consider in their approval.
And that's because those two intersections are going to come to a T there. They won't be aligned with
Yep.
28th.
Yep, so if they are not able to be a through intersection, then they should be offset at least 140 feet. So then this offset, instead of it being 103 feet, it will make it 230 feet.
Looks good.
So, can I ask a question or not yet? Here, may I ask a
Yep.
question? So, okay, so on the the north side of those, where the service road is? Is that commercial up to First? Or what is that? I'm confused by that. I mean,
Oh, okay. So that will be parking, actually. Is this what you're talking about, Rhonda, this area? Yeah, so they will have parking. This is in theory, I mean, this is a private drive, but it has the width to be the private street. So it will provide the through street for these lots.
the land north of this, of the platted, what is that land? What is that?
Oh, this is Willow Creek Drive.
Oh, that's the road.
Yep.
I'm with you now. Gosh, oh, Freddie.
So
Okay.
it's this property here on the map. This one right there. So they will come in off, they can come off of 22nd and then they'll come up and then they'll exit here. So it's really the benefit of having controlled access onto Willow Creek Drive. And then it'll just be an interior parking lot. So I can show you guys just to get a better idea.
So they're going to be individual lots, though. I'm a little confused on the note that doesn't require a development lot agreement.
Nope, so they are individual, so we have a private street maintenance agreement
Okay.
that will, and that's attached on your packet there too, so that will provide them, or spell out the maintenance responsibilities of each lot owner. So you can see here how the parking will be configured within that street. So it's going to really look like front parking lots.
Yeah. Is there an access easement that goes with those lots then too, that lays over that
Yep.
private street?
So they're going to have the parking on both sides of the road, so people are going to walk across the private road to get to wherever they want to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
it will function like a parking lot.
But these are
Right.
R2 lots, right?
C3.
C3.
Boy, I am out to lunch today.
Yeah, I think maybe the view that has the color, the zone on there is the best one to look at, because that actually shows, yeah, right there. So you can see the C3 zoning.
So that's where
Yeah. The shape looks just like the R2 lots, though.
I was looking at the yellow going,
Oh,
okay,
funny.
what are we doing here? All right.
Okay. Yeah, I think that looks good, and the road moves is reasonable, and that follows then the design standards in terms of the
Yep. Yes, it does.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
So we run into private roads a lot. I know like in front of the mall, for instance, it's kind of, that one doesn't have a road agreement that I'm aware of. But normally the city doesn't take over private roads. In order for the city to take it over, we would require curb and gutter, inlets, drainage, those type of facilities. And I just kind of, not necessarily a question for today's meeting, but I almost wonder if the city shouldn't consider, what it would take for the city to take ownership so we don't end up with, potholes and stuff like, happen in front of the mall. I mean, I know they fixed it up in the last year, but there was a while there where it was really, really potholed, and it wasn't a city street, although everyone drove on it like a city street. This will be a similar situation where, I mean, this is just, this is for 6 businesses, hopefully very successful businesses, get a lot of traffic. Just food for thought for future reference. So it'll be really hard for the city to take it over because it won't be up to city standards.
Right. Well, and I think too, that's a good point, Jeff, but this is much smaller scale. And so you see, you could see like a condo plat where you have that shared parking lot anyway. But in the mall, that was a whole nother scenario because there was a right of way that dead ended into that parking lot of Jensen Avenue. So that really should have been caught and that should have been connected through. So that's really the difference there of this is 6 lots that will be utilizing 2 access points.
The
Right.
scale and scope of this is similar to the strips that are across the street there on the corner
Yeah.
by the car wash. And it's a similar layout. It's a little bit longer, I think, in terms of total land mass there, but
Right. And the only thing I bring up is we just have a handful of these. I mean, the mall is probably the one that got the worst before it got fixed, but even in front of Walmart, that's not a street, that is Walmart property that gets accessed like a street. And my thoughts is if it functions like a street, there should be an avenue in which the city can consider it a street. I mean, this is labeled as a private drive, and this has an maintenance agreement, which is great, and hopefully it, always stays, well maintained. But just food for thought for a future development.
And we do have that specified on here as far as that it has to be, the developer agrees that to maintain the access easement area including the paved roadway and estate comparable to that of a dedicated city street and to keep the roadway free of snow. In the event the developer, its successor and title of interest fails to perform said maintenance activities in a reasonable manner, the city may, but is not required to perform the maintenance. And then the developer will reimburse, or the successors will reimburse the city. So that's something different too that we did not have in place with those
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate you reading that. And it just feels like if the city is going to do the maintenance on it, potentially, if the landowners don't do it themselves, and we're doing the maintenance on it, it feels like a city street. It should have an avenue to become a city street other than our current avenue is bring it up to city standards, which if this is built as a private drive, it'll be far from city standards. And then it's very, very difficult to get them to city standards after the fact.
Well, and in a scenario like this, we would not want that to be a public street because we have a public street. So it's actually a benefit that they are not having separate access points onto Willow Creek Drive.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. I agree with the concept completely, of having the street there, and whether it's private drive or public. My food for thought is someday in the future, if we ever wanted to make this a city street, would there be an avenue for it?
No. And so if this was just being platted as one lot and they were going to end up doing a condo plat, this wouldn't have to come before you, but it's just because they are platting them as separate lots. And then, so it's making sure really that we're getting that private street maintenance agreement in place. And that's
Yeah, I think
our
that's critical.
protection.
Yep, yep.
And our protection, the developers and the successors.
That was my next question. Does that get filed with the plat so that they know that?
Yep,
When they buy their individual lot, they will know that, they have that.
yep.
And so
It'll show up in their title work.
this agreement, as you mentioned, we didn't have that in place with the mall and some of these other properties historically, but is this a template that we're trying to apply in these situations as a city community going forward?
Yeah. Yeah, and we have for any private streets since I've been here. And it was a template when I got here. So it's been, I'm not sure when we decided to implement it, but I would say it's been a pretty long-standing procedure now.
Yeah, I mean, the mall would have been, what, 70s,
Right.
78? Walmart was 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, Brittany, or Brandy, are the lots to the south of this R2?
I
Yeah, they,
believe so.
Yeah, okay. They are, Brandy. It's on the map here, so.
Perfect.
Thank you.
any additional comments, discussion? See none, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Oh, I need a motion?
Yeah, I do, thank you.
I'd make a motion to approve with the recommendation of moving that access to split lots 5 and 6.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
All right. Aletsky,
Yes.
Spire,
Yes.
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes,
Brink.
Yes.
that motion passes. We'll move on to item 6B on the regular agenda, which is 2023-31, a plat in Valley View. Brandy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Blake. So this property is owned by Les McElhaney, and he is really doing a lot boundary adjustment that is typically a minor plat, but because we've had a replat within Valley View within the last 3 years, it has to come forward to the Plan Commission. So really, he's turning the 3 lots into 2, and this is zoned R3. So, and there's not a building permit issued because the lot line, he's adjusting the lot line, which is ideal. We would rather see it done this way than a development lot agreement. But then 2, because he is going to, he's going to add 4 feet from this southern lot into this one lot. So you can see here, the lot line was this dashed line here, and then it's being moved down 4 feet just to work with his building plan. This lot 1A still has sufficient frontage, and it meets its setbacks, being that the building is already constructed. It actually had 18-foot side yard setbacks, so there's plenty of space. They only need 10. So he still has 14 feet of setbacks, so that is that one.
And
Stand by for
he's
questions.
the owner on both lots?
Yes.
Okay.
He's been doing a lot of work up there. Looks nice.
Any questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion? Second? We'll go ahead and take a roll call.
All right, Brink,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes?
Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Spire,
Yes.
Oletzky.
Yes.
That motion carries. Move on to item 7, is open public comment. I don't think we have anybody here to speak on an item that's not on the agenda. Anybody online on Teams?
Did Randy want to tell us about that vehicle? We caught you off of mute.
Sounds good. So we'll move on to new business. And I do have a discussion point on there for the R2 and R3 density discussion. I think I'll take this over at the
Yep.
podium here so I can pull it up on the computer.
Yes, we'll turn it over to Blake, and then I have it pulled up here.
All right. So the precipice, I guess, on the discussion here was a month ago at the Board of Adjustment, we had a conditional use request for a 3 or 4 bedroom unit. Went in west of the old middle school. So that's an R2A lot. 3 and 4 bedroom dwelling units are allowable in the zoning districts R2 and R2A as conditional use. They're permitted use in the R3 district. And so with the R2A lots being older lots in town, you know, the preponderance of those lots are typically at that 50-foot lot width, which is the standard minimum lot width requirement for R2A. That lot, I think, was subdivided just over 50 feet, so it met the requirements, slightly above it. As we debated on that, we did set the side yard setback on that at 10 feet, which was in line with the R3 setbacks that govern 3 and 4 dwelling units as well. The issue that I had, and that did carry with all support except for myself, and it was strictly kind of on a principled issue of, I do think that we need to adjust the ordinance if we're in support of that type of development at that lot width density. Because as it stands today, if a developer wanted to come with that exact same development, that exact same 3 or 4 bedroom unit dwelling in the R3 district, which is supposed to be our higher density district, they would have to have twice the lot width requirement, 100 feet versus 50. And so I think there's opportunity here where currently today our table for the R3 district scales from 3 to 8, 9 to 12, and then over 12. I think we can break this apart at a little bit more granular level and look at 3 to 4 dwelling units across R3 as well as R2A and R2 with their own set of requirements. That kind of marries a blend of the 2 district requirements. So the lot width requirements from R2 with the side yard setback from the R3, which aligns also with the conditions passed on that CUP from a month ago. I do think that the scaling factor that we've got in terms of lot area coverage for density, where it's based on dwelling units and bedrooms per dwelling unit, that we've got in place in the R3 makes sense to also apply to these. So it does apply to 3 and 4 in R3. Today, it does not apply to R2 or R2A for 3 and 4 as conditional use. But my proposal would be to align it, so it doesn't matter whether it's in R2 or R3. You're basing the density and minimum lot size requirements consistently across the board. Any thoughts from the rest of the board?
I think that's a good idea. I think the one issue we always run into with the R2A is they're small. I mean, we have it in our ordinance that we don't create that zone anymore.
Right.
That was a zone that was created in 2006. as an attempt to capture a bunch of old Watertown that had those existing smaller lots, so that every time someone came with a building permit, they weren't looking at a variance. So when that CUP came to us, they weren't looking for a variance, they were looking for a conditional use. And, you know, it was a small lot. I was the one that made the motion to approve it with those conditions. I added that condition of 10 feet to
Yep.
make it, you know, feel comparable to the R3 in that case. And, you know, I voted to approve on that one because sometimes it's really hard for us to get redevelopment on those small lots.
Exactly, yeah.
So I don't want to do something that hinders the ability to redevelop those lots. I don't think that this necessarily will, but that's kind of the concern that's on the cuff is are we going to hinder redevelopment? And I'm not seeing that here, but that's just the one caveat I want to make sure we avoid.
Yeah. I mean, I think this would just basically provide the structure in code exactly how we pass that conditional use. So if anything, it provides us an easier course for doing a conditional use in the future, because we say, these are the requirements that we're okay with in terms of minimum lot size, density, setbacks, you know, which did align with the conditional use that we approved.
Yeah, I'd be okay if something like this came forward for us to discuss with possible action on it personally.
What I really just didn't like, and fundamentally why I said no that night, was just because of the fact that you couldn't take that same structure and put it on an R3 lot. I mean,
The only difference is an R3 lot, in theory, would have been platted at the correct size. You know, our minimum R3 in general is 100 foot. So we shouldn't run into as many R3s that are only 67 feet wide or whatever that property was. You know, just the R2A is an old piece of property that we deal with. But I know what you're saying.
I'll just say that I like this proposal a lot, and I also like breaking out, because we have the conditional use of 3 or 4 dwelling units in the R2 and R2A district, that because you're still being zoned R2, which is single-family attached, but you're getting up there into multifamily with 4 dwellings. So I think this adds just consistency to those types of proposals, so you're not, well, so you're keeping it more in line with the R2 district, and that you're not getting this high density where you could, and as Blake said, that you couldn't do that in the R3 district. So I like it. And I also like that Blake put the thought into it.
did all the work, yeah. It was nice, 6 a.m. on a Saturday, this was my fun, so.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring it forward for discussion primarily today, but if the board's in general agreement, and it did get the full support on that conditional use from the board at the time, so it seemed like, directionally, this was aligned with what the board wanted to do.
So Blake, the only change you're making is on an R3 lot, not messing with the R2s and,
He is.
No, so I would add it for the R2 and R2A here in the yellow.
okay. And that's what
With-
you gave us to look at when you
Yeah.
sent that out? Okay.
Yeah, so right here in white, this is what R2 has today, R2A. And so there's a 50-foot side yard, or 50-foot front yard setback, 25-foot,
Right.
oh, no, sorry, 50-foot width, 25-foot front yard setback. We've got C and D, so this is that 6-foot, 9-foot side yard situation that you got depending on lot width. So a 50-foot lot would actually be 6 foot. But with the 3 and 4 dwelling unit, we actually conditionally said that has to be 10 foot. And that does align with what's currently in place in R3. So the regular R2A would stay the same. This would just break out the 3 and 4 units specifically with these conditions. And then it would also scale the lot area based on density, just like we've got in R3, which is based on a combination of the number of dwelling units and the bedrooms per dwelling unit.
And in R2, in R2A, it'll still stay a conditional use, so they'll
Conditional
still have
use.
to come to the board.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, but
But it gives us a better framework to work with and say, well, these are the conditions that we're essentially considering for that type of use.
would, question, would the one that we did on August 10th, would have that one then been a conditional use, or would it have been a conditional use and variance? Do we know if?
It would have been a conditional use. It would have still met the minimum lot area requirements and
Would have
side
met
yard.
all of-
Yep.
All of those? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I did validate that when I did the analysis.
And yeah, that was, that's what I was gonna bring up, Jeff, is that if it would end up not meeting these, yes, then it would have to be a conditional use and variance.
Right.
So that also adds some better pre-qualifiers.
Right.
Give our developers some direction on what to go when they see these lots and they're going, well, I could do, and go for the conditional use.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it helps them, and I think it helps us as a board to say, hey, these are the guidelines. This is what we're looking for.
And then
Yeah.
instead of asking for 4 units, maybe they only ask for 3, because that's where they meet.
Yeah, or limit the number of bedrooms in there, which really governs, density as well, right? So you can have 4 units with 1 bedroom apiece, or 4 bedrooms apiece. That's vastly different in terms of density. So these were 4 units, 2 bedrooms apiece, which according to the table is 1,700 square foot per dwelling unit, and it met those requirements.
Good work. I like it too. I really like that have different side yard setbacks. That was my biggest sticking point a month ago was, our current table had the C or D, which is 6 to 9.
Yep.
And, and we have the ability to incur more, and we did, but it just was kind of a hard sell to tell the developer, oh, by the way, we're gonna go up to 10, even though that was not what you even thought was on the table.
Yeah,
And that's the thing about conditional uses as well, is that you can place those conditions. That one, though, I was questioning why not also require a fence, just to create privacy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we have in some cases, and that's certainly something that we can do during the conditional use process, because it's still going to come through conditional use.
Right,
We want
right.
to change it to permitted.
Well, and with that, I mean, there again, we always say not in my neighborhood, not next to me, right? I don't care
Yeah.
if it's you. I mean, is that something that we, really do want to put a little thought into that? Because the neighbor doesn't want to be the one to say, well, I don't mind it going there, but I sure wish they had to put a fence. I mean,
Well-
so, I don't know. I mean, in those small areas, especially, some of the historic homes, it does take away from the feel, you know what I mean? It would depend on the spot.
Yeah, and there's multiple ways that you can do that. I mean, you can either put it right in ordinance that requires that, like we do with the transition between, commercial and residential. And you could say, if it's this specific use for, 4 dwelling unit next to a single family, you could have that restriction codified. Or you can leave it open as something that you attach through conditional use process.
I'd like to leave fence as something that we go with how it feels. I mean, at that meeting, most of the neighbors were vocal, and the fence didn't really appease any of them, so I wasn't gonna, I didn't feel that opposing a fence helped, really satisfied them,
Yeah.
but.
And in the case of the way that the parking was being laid out on the rear side of the building, facing the buildings, it wasn't facing, the neighboring property like some of the other times we've required, fencing has been because of headlights shining into homes.
Yeah, it would be nice when you notify those neighbors, though, if they knew that it is okay to either, contact one of us or, send their letter stating their concern instead of being, just resentful the whole time that it got to go up without. If that's something that I don't know if you could incorporate that in the letter, to say it is okay to ask for some things since it is a conditional, you know what I mean? And just like the neighbors last time showed up, they don't always, just because if it's just one neighbor, the direct neighbor doesn't want to, start off on the wrong foot. That's the only,
And,
Yeah.
and that's why I think that, trying to diffuse any neighbor conflict, because having somebody show up to a public hearing and speaking against somebody's project, that does just create awkward situations, that as much of that we can avoid, the better. And so it is, that could be something where if you are, that we could, and we could easily add that to the landscape and lighting requirement, same, like, I think Blake said, like we do for parking lot screening.
Yep.
Because it puts neighbors in a tough position. And we don't want that either, you know, we want to try to keep those.
And maybe just
Neighbor-
as a board, we take a good look at that. If it's in a historical neighborhood, that we be the ones to step to the plate and say, you know, for the integrity of the neighborhood, we think we should do this, and we make that a condition also. That, I'm just saying that we be a little more aggressive with it in certain situations. In some situations, it won't matter, but just so we're
Yeah, I'm
aware.
certainly not opposed to, you know, codifying that. And if you just put the restriction, you know, in specific cases where you've got an apartment building like this, right, a multi-dwelling unit building, and it's adjacent to the parking lot, which is adjacent to a single-family unit, I mean, that's a pretty narrow restriction then, and I think it's certainly reasonable. But when you codify it, then the expectations are clear up front.
And that could be something too that, so, and I don't, by no means, I mean, bring that up as like scrutinizing you guys. But I just was thinking, you know, the difference of the 10-foot setback versus the 9, that, you know, maybe it's a simple footnote on there that if it is a 3 to 4, that it'd be a 10-foot with a fence, or, but also that you guys can leave that up and look at it case by case.
It
Yeah.
may look like a fortress if it's too narrow. That, I mean, it's going to really, it is case by case, you know, it
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really needs to be. It's just, you know, if there's public listening to this and down the road, that we take a good look at that neighborhood and just be responsible when we do grant those conditional uses if we think it's best that, you know, a fence go up. And maybe that's just terminology that should be placed there. So when you're telling that developer, you know, depending on the location, you may end up having a fence may be required, whether it's a fence or bushes or whatever, you know, screening, I guess would be the word, may be required, just so they're aware of that expense that may be asked of them. I don't know.
And that's something that you guys always, you know, like as you're analyzing a application, you are going through the A through H, which does include screening. So I mean, just being diligent about the, you know, making sure that you guys are going through each of those items so that you're consistent with it. And then that would trigger, you know, the thought and to really look at that. And I mean, we do have access to like the 360 views, so we can start utilizing that where you guys can actually see it, not just bird's eye. And then, so you have a better feel for the neighborhood if you don't drive by or check it out or know where it is. So, I mean, we can utilize things like that too.
Yeah, that can help. It's certainly not a bad thing to have additional visibility, so.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for all the input, everybody.
Thank you, Blake. That
Any
was
other
good
new
information.
business from the board or from staff?
I was gonna email you guys tomorrow, but just that the block of rooms for the South Dakota Planners Association meeting or conference is closing on September 23rd, and that conference is held in Mitchell, South Dakota on October 24th through the 26th. I'll email you the agenda and then just kind of the last call for anyone that would like to attend. We'd love to have you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brandy. Any old business?
None that I have?
Any reason for executive session?
No.
I will adjourn us. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, guys. Have a good night.